Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation and suddenly nothing? Your brain just completely freezes and you can't catch up with a single word the other person is saying.
Oh, absolutely. It's like everything just blinks out. 1 second you're following along fine, and then gone. You've lost him completely.
And the worst part, you smile and nod like you understood everything. Tell me I'm not the only one who does that.
You are definitely not alone. And honestly, I think this happens to almost every English learner, even advanced ones.
Right.
So, quick question for everyone watching. Has this ever happened to you? Just type panic or fine in the comments right now. We'd love to know.
Today, we want to talk about why this happens, why your brain just shuts down when someone speaks too fast, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it.
And I want to say up front, if this has happened to you, you are not bad at English. You are not failing.
That's important.
Your brain is doing something very specific, and once you understand it, everything starts to make a lot more sense. So let me start with a story. And I'm going to be really honest here because I think sometimes people assume that this kind of thing stops happening once your English reaches a certain level. It doesn't. At least it didn't for me.
Go on.
A few months ago, I had to call my bank. Completely routine, I just needed to update some information on my account. Nothing complicated. And I told myself, this is fine. I do this kind of thing all the time now.
Okay, and let me guess, it was not fine.
It was not fine. So the person picks up and immediately launches into this very fast, very rehearsed introduction. Their name, the department, the ID number, and then a security verification question, all in about 8 seconds.
Wow.
And I trailed off completely. Like mentally, I was already gone by the time they finished saying their name.
What happened in your body in that moment? Because I think people don't talk about the physical side of this enough.
It's immediate. That adrenaline rush hits you instantly, like your body goes into alert mode before your brain has even had time to process what's happening. My heart rate went up, I got that slightly sick feeling in my stomach, and then this wave of overwhelm just washed over me.
And I think that's the moment where most people make it worse for themselves because that overwhelm signal, that's your brain's stress response kicking in.
Right, the stress response.
And the stressed brain is genuinely less efficient at decoding language. So the very thing that's supposed to protect you actually makes your comprehension worse.
Which is such a cruel irony. You panic because you don't understand, and the panic makes you understand even less.
Exactly. And in that moment, what were you thinking?
I was thinking, I wish this person would just slow down. I genuinely remember that specific thought. I wish they would pause. I wish they would rephrase what they said. I wish I could ask them to start over without feeling completely humiliated. But of course, none of that happened because I was too self-conscious to say anything.
So what did you actually do?
I said, sorry, could you repeat that? Which, good, that's the right move. But even after they repeated it, I still only caught about half of what they said. Because now I was so in my own head that I couldn't absorb anything properly.
That's such a real thing. You're so busy being stressed about not understanding that you're not actually using your brain's full capacity to understand.
Right, and eventually I just had to be honest and say, I'm sorry, I'm not catching everything. Could you speak a little more slowly? And they were completely fine about it, completely kind. But the damage was already done emotionally, you know? I felt embarrassed for the rest of the day.
And I think that's something important to sit with because the embarrassment, the self-consciousness, that is often a bigger problem than the language gap itself. You can recover from missing a word. It's much harder to recover from feeling like you failed in front of someone.
Absolutely. And I wish more people would talk about that aspect of language learning, the emotional weight of it, because it's real and it matters and it can genuinely hold you back if you let it.
So let's break down what actually happened in that phone call, because there are a few things going on at the same time. And it's worth looking at each one.
Yes, go for it.
First, there's the speed itself. On the phone, without any visual cues, no lip movement, no body language, no facial expressions, your brain is working much harder than in a face to face conversation. So you're already at a disadvantage before the conversation even begins.
I never thought about it that way, but that's completely true. So much of what we use to understand someone is visual.
Exactly. And second, there's the familiarity factor. When you know someone, when you're used to their voice, their accent, their way of speaking, your brain has already started to build a kind of internal map of how they communicate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A stranger on the phone gives you none of that. Everything is unfamiliar, which means everything takes more cognitive effort.
And then the third thing, which is, I think, the most insidious, is the expectation. You told yourself it would be easy, so when it wasn't, the gap between what you expected and what actually happened triggered that stress response even faster.
That is such a good point. The higher your expectation, the harder the fall when things don't go to plan. Okay, my turn. And mine is a bit more embarrassing, actually.
Oh, I love when you say that. Please continue.
So, I was watching a series, a crime drama, which I've been meaning to start for months, and I decided no subtitles, I'm doing this properly, I'm going to prove something to myself.
Brave.
Overconfident, as you said last time. So, the first episode starts, and it's fine for a while. Standard scenes, people talking in relatively clear, well paced dialogue. I'm following along, I'm feeling good about myself. And then there's this scene, two detectives, and they are speaking at full speed, overlapping each other, using a lot of very specific slang and shorthand that I had nothing. No context clues, no way to anchor myself to the conversation. I just completely drifted.
And what did you do?
Nothing initially. I just sat there, staring at the screen, hoping that somehow the meaning would emerge from the sounds if I just waited long enough. Which, spoiler, it did not.
The meaning did not emerge.
The meaning absolutely did not emerge. And after about 3 minutes of this, I realized I had also drifted through what I think was quite an important plot point. Because suddenly, one of the detectives looked very alarmed, and I had no idea why.
Oh no.
Oh, yes, and here's the thing. I wish I would have just paused it and rewound it. That would have been the sensible thing. But there was a part of me that felt like pausing was admitting defeat, which is so irrational when I think about it now. But in the moment, it felt real.
That's such a common thing, though. We attach so much meaning to these small decisions, like rewinding a video somehow says something about who you are as a language learner.
Exactly, and it doesn't. It says absolutely nothing except that you're paying attention and you want to understand. But we get so caught up in this idea of what fluency looks like that we create obstacles for ourselves that don't need to exist.
So, what eventually happened with this series?
I turned the subtitles on for that episode. But, and this is the important part, I kept watching. I didn't stop. I didn't tell myself I wasn't ready. I just adapted my strategy.
Adapted.
And by the third or fourth episode, I was turning them off again for whole stretches of time because I'd started to get used to the rhythm of how those specific characters spoke.
That's actually a really important point. There's a big difference between I can't understand fast speech and I can't yet understand this particular speaker at this speed in this context. Those are very different problems.
Right, and one of them is something you can actually work on specifically.
So let's talk about the mechanics of it for a second, because I think understanding why fast speech is hard actually helps you deal with it better. It's not just that people are speaking quickly. It's what fast speech does to the sounds themselves.
Yes, this is something I find fascinating. When people speak fast, sounds change. They blur together, syllables get swallowed. Words that you know perfectly well in isolation become almost unrecognizable when they're running together at speed.
Things like want to becoming wanna, or going to becoming gonna, or did you becoming didja. Your brain has to decode these compressed forms in real time, and if you're not trained to anticipate them, you'll stumble every single time.
And the tricky part is this isn't laziness on the speaker's part. This is just how natural speech actually sounds. The slow, clear pronunciation you hear in language learning materials, that's the artificial version. Real conversation sounds completely different.
And I think that's one of the reasons so many learners feel betrayed when they leave the classroom and enter the real world, because the gap between what they practiced and what they encounter is huge.
I wish teachers would address this more directly, honestly. I wish they would spend more time on authentic, fast, natural speech from the very beginning, even if it's just for exposure, because the longer you go without hearing it, the more shocking it is when you do.
Agreed. I wish more learning resources would reflect what real language actually sounds like, not just clean, slow, perfectly enunciated sentences. Real people, real speed, real messiness.
Okay, so you're watching something, you lose a thread, you feel that familiar panic starting to rise. What do you actually do in that moment to get yourself back?
For me, it's about finding an anchor word. One word that I catch clearly, even if it's a small one, and using it as a starting point to reconstruct what's being said. It's like finding one piece of a puzzle and building outward from there.
That's such a good instinct because your brain is actually much better at filling in gaps than you think. If you give it one solid piece of information, it can often extrapolate quite a lot from context.
Exactly, and it stops you from panicking about what you missed and redirects your energy towards what you can still catch. Let's talk about what is maybe the most stressful version of this scenario. Being in a room full of people, a meeting or a classroom or a presentation, where it feels like everyone around you is following along perfectly and you are not.
Oh, this one is brutal because it's not just about comprehension anymore, it's about visibility. You feel exposed.
Yeah, exposed.
Like at any moment, someone is going to turn to you and ask your opinion, and you have absolutely no idea what the conversation has been about for the past 10 minutes.
I had this experience in a professional training session about 2 years ago. It was an all-day workshop, external facilitator, very knowledgeable person. But she had an accent I wasn't used to, and she spoke at a genuinely very fast pace. And I spent the first hour trying so hard to keep up that I was exhausted before we even got to the first break.
That kind of sustained effort is genuinely draining. People underestimate how much energy it takes to listen in a second language, especially at speed.
It takes enormous cognitive resources, and the problem is when those resources run out, you start to tune out involuntarily. It's not a choice. Your brain is just trying to protect itself from overload.
And then the spiral starts. You tune out, you miss something, you can't follow the next part because you missed the context, you feel more anxious, you tune out more. It just compounds.
So what I ended up doing, and this sounds simple, but it genuinely helped, I stopped trying to understand every single word and started trying to understand the structure of the conversation instead. Is this a new topic or a continuation of the previous one? Is this an example or a main point? Is she asking a question or making a statement?
That's such a good reframe. Instead of trying to decode every individual unit, you zoom out and look at the shape.
And it reduces the pressure enormously because suddenly you're not failing if you miss a sentence. You're just gathering the information you can and fitting it into a larger frame.
I do something similar in meetings. If I feel myself starting to drift, I pick one person to anchor my focus on, usually whoever is speaking. and I concentrate just on their energy, their facial expressions, their gestures, their tone, even when I'm not catching every word. It keeps me present enough that when I do catch something clear, I have some context to place it in.
That's such a good instinct because meaning isn't just in words, it's in everything. How someone says something, the pace they use, whether they slow down for emphasis, whether they look uncertain or confident.
Right. And actually, this is what native speakers do too when they're in a difficult listening environment. A loud bar, a crowded event, a bad phone line. They use every signal available to them, not just the words.
Which means it's not a learner problem, it's just a human problem, and learners experience a more intense version of it.
There's another layer to the meeting scenario that I want to talk about, which is the fear of asking someone to slow down or repeat themselves, because a lot of people won't do it, even when they know they should.
Because it feels like you're announcing your weakness, like you're saying out loud in front of everyone, I don't understand.
And there's a status element to it too, especially in professional settings. You don't want to be seen as the person who can't keep up.
But here's the thing in my experience, almost every time I have asked someone to slow down or rephrase, they have done it without any judgment whatsoever. Most people are not paying attention to how you're receiving their message, they're thinking about what they're saying.
Which is actually reassuring and slightly deflating at the same time. We're not nearly as visible as we think we are.
Exactly. And most people, when they realize they've been speaking too fast or unclearly, are actually grateful that you said something because they want to be understood.
I wish I would have internalized that years ago. I spent so much time in the early years just nodding along, pretending to understand things I completely missed. And it cost me, because then I'd have to catch up later or make decisions based on incomplete information or ask someone separately, which was often more embarrassing anyway.
The irony is that staying silent to avoid embarrassment often leads to more embarrassment down the line.
Every time, every single time.
Okay, so let's get into the actual neuroscience of this. Because I think when you understand what your brain is doing, you stop blaming yourself and start working with it instead of against it.
Yes, and I want to preface this by saying neither of us are neuroscientists, but we've read a lot and we've experienced a lot, and there are some things that are just really useful to understand.
So here's the basic picture. When you're listening to someone speak, your brain is doing several things simultaneously. It's decoding the sounds into phonemes, it's matching those phonemes to words, it's parsing the grammar to understand the structure, it's extracting the meaning,
Wow, yeah.
and it's storing what it just heard in working memory while it processes the next bit. All of that at the same time in real time.
And in your first language, most of that happens automatically. You've been doing it for so long that it's unconscious. You don't feel the effort because there isn't much effort. It just happened.
But in a second language, especially when you're still developing, a lot of those processes are still somewhat manual, which means they take up conscious attention, which means they're slower, which means that when the input comes in faster than your processing speed, something gets dropped.
And when something gets dropped, when you miss a word or a phrase or lose track of the grammatical structure, your brain sends a signal, an alert, a kind of internal flag that says, warning, there's a gap here, you might be in trouble.
And that flag is the beginning of the panic, because your brain interprets a comprehension gap as a potential threat, especially in a social context where there are consequences to not understanding.
And then the stress response kicks in, adrenaline, cortisol, your heart rate goes up, your focus narrows, and here's the cruel twist. That narrowed focus makes it harder to absorb the broad, context-based listening that actually helps you follow fast speech. So the very response that's triggered by the panic actively makes the panic worse.
It's a genuinely vicious cycle. And I wish someone would have explained this to me when I was first learning. Because for years, I just thought, I'm not good enough. I haven't studied enough. I need to know more words. And that was never really the full picture.
It's partly the words, yes, vocabulary helps, but a huge part of it is training your nervous system to stay calm under the pressure of not understanding. And that's a completely different kind of practice.
And it's practice that most language courses don't include at all. We drill grammar, we memorize vocabulary, we practice pronunciation, but we almost never practice the experience of not understanding and staying composed.
Which is the exact experience that real life keeps throwing at us.
So, how do you actually train that? How do you get better at composing yourself when things get fast and confusing?
For me, the single most effective thing has been deliberate exposure at a slightly uncomfortable level. Not content that's so far beyond you that you understand nothing, that's just demoralizing, but content that's maybe 70 or 80% comprehensible, where you're catching most of it, but there are still moments of losing the thread.
And the key is in those moments of losing the thread, you don't stop. You don't rewind immediately. You let yourself sit with the discomfort of not understanding, just for a few seconds, and you keep going. And slowly, over time, your brain learns that an incomprehension gap isn't a catastrophe. It's just a gap, and you can keep moving forward anyway.
It's almost like emotional exposure therapy for language learners.
In a way, it genuinely is. You're teaching your nervous system that this experience, the fast speech, the confusion, the momentary blankness, is survivable. And the more times you survive it, the less your brain treats it as a threat.
And eventually, and this is the really exciting part, eventually your brain stops treating it as a threat at all. Fast speech stops being a trigger for panic and starts just being speech.
Just speech.
Slightly challenging speech maybe, but not something that shuts your whole system down.
And that shift from threat to challenge changes everything. Because when you're in challenge mode, your brain is actually more creative, more flexible, more capable of finding alternative routes to meaning. It uses context clues better. It anticipates better. It fills in gaps better.
All of which are skills that native speakers use constantly, by the way. Nobody understands 100% of everything they hear, even in their first language. They're constantly filling in, inferring, guessing intelligently based on context.
And you can learn to do that too. It just takes time and the right kind of practice.
Okay, let's get really practical because I know that some of you listening right now are thinking, this is all very interesting, but what do I actually do tomorrow? What changes?
So let's go through some specific strategies, things that we've both tried, things that have worked, and a couple of things that sound good in theory but don't actually help as much as people think.
First strategy, and this is probably the most important one, is what I call the anchor and drift technique. Instead of trying to catch every single word, you consciously choose to anchor to key content words, usually nouns and verbs, and let the smaller words drift past. To, of, these almost never carry the meaning. The meat of what someone is saying is almost always in the nouns and verbs.
And the interesting thing about this is that it's actually closer to how your brain naturally processes language when it's working efficiently. In your first language, you're not decoding every syllable equally. You're constantly prioritizing. You just do it automatically.
But with practice, you can start doing it more consciously in your second language as well. And it dramatically reduces the cognitive load, which means you have more resources left over to handle the overall comprehension.
Second strategy, and this one surprised me when I first tried it, is to improve your tolerance for ambiguity. Most learners have a very low tolerance for not knowing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
The moment they hit a word or phrase they don't recognize, they fixate on it. They keep trying to decode it while the conversation moves on, and then they've missed the next 3 sentences as well.
I wish I would have learned earlier that it is completely okay to not know a word and just keep going. In fact, it's not just okay, it's necessary because the conversation doesn't wait for you. You have to keep moving and pick up the meaning later from context.
And actually, that's how most native speakers acquire new vocabulary too. Not from a dictionary, from hearing a word repeatedly in different contexts until the meaning becomes clear.
Third strategy, and this one is specifically for high pressure situations like meetings or presentations, is to prepare. If you know the topic of a meeting in advance, spend 5 minutes before it just activating the relevant vocabulary in your head. Think about the words that are likely to come up. Imagine how the conversation might go.
Because your brain processes known words much faster than unfamiliar ones. So if a word has already been warmed up in your mind, when you hear it in the conversation, it registers almost instantly.
It's like loading a program before you need it. The processing is already halfway done.
Fourth strategy is to speak up when you don't understand. But not just, sorry, can you repeat that? I mean specifically asking for what you need. Could you say that more slowly, or could you rephrase that? Or even just, I'm not sure I caught that last part you were saying. And then summarize what you did catch to give the other person a reference point.
That last one is especially powerful because it shows the other person exactly where you lost a thread, which makes it much easier for them to pick up and clarify from exactly that point.
And it comes across as engaged and attentive, not confused. You're not just saying, I didn't understand. You're saying, I was following carefully. Here's what I got. Can you help me with this part?
Which is exactly how any skilled communicator handles a confusing moment, by the way, native speaker or not.
And fifth, I want to say something about what not to do, because there's one very common piece of advice that I think is genuinely unhelpful.
Oh, what's that?
The advice to just relax, just stay calm, don't panic. I hear this a lot, and I understand the intention behind it, but honestly, it's not actionable. Telling someone who is already in a panic to just relax is a bit like telling someone who's falling to just not fall.
Right. The panic is already happening. Just relax doesn't give you anything to do with it.
Exactly. What's more useful is giving your nervous system something specific to do instead of panicking. Breathe slowly, consciously. Find that anchor word. Zoom out to the shape of the conversation. Give your brain a task that isn't understand everything immediately.
Redirect the energy. I love that.
And I think that works because it's respectful of the fact that the panic is real. You're not pretending it isn't happening. You're just channeling what your body's doing into something more useful.
I want to zoom out a little now and talk about the longer picture because everything we've talked about today, the strategies, the techniques, those are tools for managing the panic when it happens. But the real goal over time is to reach a place where fast speech doesn't trigger that response in the first place.
And that takes time, real time, not days or weeks, months and years. And I think it's important to be honest about that because a lot of people feel like they should already be there. Like if they're still struggling with fast speech, something has gone wrong with their learning.
Nothing has gone wrong. You're just at the point in the journey where this is the challenge. And this is the challenge that most learners face, regardless of how hard they've worked.
The thing that helped me most in terms of long-term progress with this was changing what I measured as success. For a long time, I measured success by whether I understood everything. And by that metric, I was constantly failing because fast native speech, I wasn't catching everything. I still don't, actually.
No one does.
No one does. So I started measuring success differently. Did I follow the main point? Did I contribute meaningfully to the conversation? Did I feel less panicked than last time? Those became my metrics, and suddenly progress started to feel real and visible.
That's such important advice because progress with listening is so invisible compared to, say, learning new vocabulary. You can count words, you can't really count amount of panic experienced, but the progress is happening even when it doesn't feel like it.
Every time you sit with discomfort and keep going, you are changing your brain, literally. The neural pathways involved in processing fast speech get stronger with use. It's just very slow and very invisible, which makes it easy to feel like nothing is happening.
I wish people would give themselves more credit for that. I really do. Because the fact that you're still here, still watching, still listening, still trying, that is the practice. You're doing it right now.
One last thing I want to say before we close, and this is something I feel quite strongly about.
Go for it.
The panic you feel when someone speaks too fast is not a sign that you're not good enough. It's not a sign that you've been doing something wrong. It's a sign that you care about communicating well. It's a sign that you're paying attention. And it's a sign that you are in the exact right place in your learning, at the edge of your comfort zone, which is where real growth happens.
I couldn't have put that better. You're not behind. You're right where the learning is.
Okay, challenge time, because we always want to leave you with something specific to do, not just something to think about.
This week's challenge is this. Find one piece of audio or video content, a podcast episode, a YouTube video, a film scene, a TV clip, something that is slightly too fast for your current comfort level, something where you know you're going to struggle a bit.
And listen to it without pausing, the whole thing. Don't stop to look things up. Don't rewind every time you miss something. Just let it flow. Focus on what you can catch. Let the rest go.
And just notice what happens in your body when you start to feel that panic coming. Don't fight it. Don't judge it. Just observe it. Breathe. Find your anchor word and keep going.
And then, if you want, listen to it again. With that same content fresh in your ears, you'll be surprised how much more you catch the second time, because your brain has already started to map the rhythm and the patterns.
That second listen is often where people have genuine breakthroughs. The first time through, you're managing the panic. The second time, you're actually listening.
And if you want to share how it went, or just tell us which content you chose, drop a comment below. We genuinely read them, and it genuinely helps other people to see they're not alone in this.
Before we go, one more thing. I've put together a PDF for this episode with the full transcript, the grammar notes on wish, would, and all the key vocabulary from today's conversation. It's completely free and it's in the description below. Download it, print it, use it. That's what it's there for.
And if today's episode helped you, if even one thing we said landed for you, please share it with someone else who's learning English, because the best thing you can do for your own learning is surround yourself with people who are on the same journey.
We'll see you in the next one.
Take care, everyone. You've got this.